Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Mark Ellis. Coach Ellis is the Director of Olympic Sport Performance at Northwestern University. He works with field hockey, wrestling, and men's tennis. Prior to making the move to Northwestern, he was the Assistant Strength and Conditioning Coach at Princeton University, where he oversaw the Tigers' men's lacrosse, men's soccer, men's swimming, men's and women's diving, and women's tennis programs. Ellis was also an assistant athletic performance coach at Stony Brook. He began his coaching career as a volunteer strength coach at Hofstra University. Coach Ellis has a master's degree from Hofstra in sports science. While he is known for his work in lacrosse, he has quickly shown his ability to help all sports reach a high level of success. So, welcome to the show, Coach.
Appreciate it. How you doing?
Doing good. So, it's the holidays. You got a little time off. What are you going to do with your time off?
See some family. I think that's the best part about it. My family hasn't come to Illinois yet, so kind of get to see them since like the 6-month stretch. So it's been good to be back.
It gets to be a long stretch when you're somewhere and you know nobody.
Yeah, that's the big thing too. And like we fall right into season, and you're like, okay, trying to catch up, new role, new teams. So you're kind of just learning. So which is cool because you're not like intern type of energy. You're just like absorbing everything. So it's a good spot.
Now, some of the studying I've done on you, you've managed to navigate two worlds very well. A blue collar world and a white collar world. You found yourself in the Ivy League, but that's not necessarily how you grew up. So how do you manage to walk that line so, I guess, easily?
I think the biggest piece is just being authentic. I tell my athletes to be authentic a lot, and because just being who you are gets you into doors. But generally, just being you. I think the biggest thing. If you and those doors aren't open, sometimes maybe it's not for you. So I'm welcome to anything. I'm just pretty open door and I like learning from people. I like being the dumbest guy in the room. Like I want to absorb it anytime I need because you never know what the interaction can lead to. It can lead to a long-term friendship. It can lead to a job opportunity. But I think just in the moment, it's a really good thing to have.
Now, you're working with minds that are thinking way farther ahead in their life and how they view things. So you're taking a blue-collar mindset and working with future leaders of the world. Very analytical athletes. So how do you explain and get what you want out of an analytical athlete as opposed to a blue-collar athlete?
I think athletes across the board, no matter where I was, they all want to win by some degree. People just analyze it differently. I think that's the biggest piece in relating to them and bringing it always back to sport, bringing it back to how you want to do it. Some people may do it more of a check the boxes way. Some people want to get after it immediately. But as a strength coach, as a performance coach, then you get to use your talents to kind of set that blueprint wherever they may need it. They may need it visually. They may need it analytically. They may need it. So I think that's the idea I bring to a university like Princeton, Northwestern, but from the same thing I'm learning from them, and how they see things. So I think that's the biggest thing is going at it and just figure out how their program, put it in front of them, display it, have opportunity to educate them as well, and get that feedback from them.
I had read the article that Tony Holler wrote, staying in my lane, or I think a while back, and talking about how you brought a sprint-based program to lacrosse at Princeton. What made you start pursuing that?
So this is so funny. So I was a college lacrosse player, and based on my experience, we were just perimeters, 2-mile conditioning, and my summers were all wrapped around making this run test, this 2-mile test. I didn't know at this point. I didn't know I was going to be performance coach. So, but I told myself if I ever became any position to be a coach, I would never do that to my athletes. Because I didn't feel like it was worth it. I didn't feel like it was worth the squeeze. Energy was always dead. And I think just the energy piece is a huge part of just the culture and how a team kind of maneuvers. So kind of fast forward, got an opportunity at Hofstra, working for a guy named Jimmy Prendergast. He now does tactical, but he introduced me to like a little bit more speed training. From that point, I was like, okay, I can have an opportunity as an intern. He's kind of throw my ideas at them, and everybody see how it goes. Then got to Stony Brook for an assistant role, true assistant role. They're working women's lacrosse, highly talented team there, top 10, top 5 program in the country. I went there, so I knew the coach as well. And so for me, he trusted me off the jump. He trusted me, so I wasn't trying to maneuver or play this tic-tac with a coach sometimes, trying to learn each other. But he was like, hey, make my athletes better. And I'm like, they're doing everything right. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, let's just do some more sprinting with them. Let's be more competitive with them. I see how much we get more out of that more than the extra conditioning day. So we started to just sprint all the time. At this point, we didn't have lasers. So I was like, had a stopwatch, think about numbers. And I was grouping them in groups of 3 to 4. And group A, the fast people, and we were just sprinting. Winner stays in that lane, loser drops down one lane. So you have this opportunity where you have athletes competing and sprinting at high velocities. Okay, cool. I don't have the technology to do it, but this swim team that was really good. How can I help them in this way? And the team reacted really well. The coach reacted really well. I'm like, all right, I'm going full into this. And it's during COVID time, and I was banking on trying to go that full season with women's lacrosse. Like, I got the opportunity at Princeton, and I'm like, this is a historical program. I got to do it. I just got to make the change. And I'm going to Princeton for 2 years. But that first year at Princeton was COVID, and Ivy Leagues were canceled. So I had about maybe 20 athletes, 15 athletes, lacrosse players that didn't unenroll in school. So they were just there doing education and training with me. And I'm like, this is the perfect bubble to train this, you know? They were all doing school in their rooms with the COVID, but they were training with me. So I went full go, got on the phone with got the opportunity at Princeton, and coach was like, I want to make them faster. And we did everything we needed to make them faster. We got time gauge, we got catapult to kind of measure the things out, and we went full go. So that's how it kind of started. But without that COVID year to have like a blueprint, and that summer that 20 kids went home, and now they're my biggest spokesman to the rest of the team. You know, so it just happened. It just happened to work like that. And the coach at Princeton did a great job and helped me. Like, hey, this is your thing. But every time we had the opportunity to talk about feed the Tigers, there he spoke about it. We sprint for a reason, and it kind of took a mind of its own. But I can't credit it all to me. I think it's the coaching staff there, and the kids wanted to embrace it too. Just so it worked. Just two people, cultures, myself and the Princeton lacrosse team had identity and what we wanted to do. And it melted and worked perfectly.
So how has your athletes at Northwestern embraced the sprinting concept?
Honestly, it hasn't fully gone into fruition yet because of the short time. I got there in January, and everybody's home. So I'm writing programs with people I haven't even seen yet. And the language I may say on my program, I have to translate that to 20 different people multiple times over. So the people in the past who had the position 8 put a great program in before me, and I kind of created the last probably 2 months of that, maybe the July and August plan I really mapped out. And from there we go right into the season. Northwestern field hockey, and this is our 3rd time in a national championship run, so like they didn't need me, you know. Like, so I knew that. So coming into it with coaches like that, it's like, hey, how can I help and just drive straight? So we implemented a little bit early in the season, but I wanted to make things as normal as possible for them, another year for them. But I was a big learner that year, this last fall, and seeing how things work. I implemented more of my stuff, but I don't want to throw too much at them. This offseason is going to be huge. I'm super excited. Like, we get back January, that's where the bread and butter starts to happen. But this fall, we had a little bit of it, but I can't say we haven't gone full go. And I haven't done wrestling and tennis. I've done a little bit of it, but not to the extent of like a true field sport.
Right. So you're in the mecca of wrestling.
Yeah, literally the mecca of wrestling.
How do you? I've thought about this a lot, and you know, I know wrestling's a new thing that you've kind of taken on, looking at your bio a little bit. How much can sprinting help wrestlers? In my mind, we do so much conditioning with wrestlers. So you can run them, and what happens is your force production drops. The longer you go in these long runs, your force production drops. If we could move that to a more sprint-based conditioning style up to even a 400, how would we improve the anaerobic athlete that a wrestler is supposed to be?
I think that would do a lot of justice to wrestling. I think, but the idea and the culture of wrestling is a mountain, very big to climb. And I think it runs deep from the minute you start wrestling. I was a former wrestler. My uncle was a state wrestler, and I worked with wrestling at Hofstra. So wrestling is I understand how difficult, not only physically and mentally, it is. So I think the biggest idea of introducing even speed work to be a really big priority, it has to be worth the squeeze rather than the strength training. And they're going to do cardio based either with the strength conditioning coach or within the team. So to try to squeeze out, where do you find more important for a guy who's cutting weight? Is that running at high velocity is worth it rather than strength training? You have to just pick which one you kind of want to deal with, and the coaching staff you're dealing with. I think I could find real true benefit to speed training with the rest. I think they needed that frequency for them. They need that central nervous system spike always, because sometimes it gets so hot, it gets so rattled because of the weight cut and just practice in general. So I think that can benefit, but at the same time, you find that, okay, I got 30 to 20 minutes to do that. Now I got to strength train this kid who's cutting weight. I got to keep him strong. I got to get him jumping. I got to get him explosive. So I think it's a battle, but I think if you have the right condition, the right situation, and a team that really wants to go with it, I think it could be really beneficial. That's a lot of minds to change of them, not only from a coaching perspective maybe, or an athlete perspective. We've been training a certain way his whole life.
Yes, because you're starting to attack dogma. And, it's a religious experience for so many of these people that you might be better on taking on the government than you are the entrenched ideas in wrestling. But you did say something in there that I hadn't thought about much. You got to take the conditioning or the weight into account, and most college wrestlers that I've seen walk around 20 to 25 pounds heavy. So now you have, not only do you have to change that, now you have to change the ideas that are already existing.
Has a lot to do with it, because even we have force plates and we use them, and you see the fatigue in some of the wrestlers, any other athletes. But sometimes you see a wrestler during a cut, you may see some things drop, and you may see like in your head red flag. You flip and realize the guy's cutting weight. So you see some of these numbers, it may take, oh God, but this may be his cycle, how he gets things done. So then you talk about high speed velocity, thinking about, okay, I have maybe a dehydrated, not at his pinnacle, and I'm asking him to do a really high thing. So I think sometimes we may lose form in those sprints. So you have to just take what you want out of it. So I have to be really smart with it. Maybe if you have like some of those guys who sit relatively, say 10 to 5 pounds over, get down a little bit more, or maybe some heavyweights, can be more explosive with them, almost treat them like shot putters in a sense, and put them through things like that. I think it's really beneficial because the weight's not that of matter. You really want to get them just really strong. The younger guy maybe get a little bigger, fill out depending on what the coach thinks about the conference and what we're going to compete against. But at the same time, like now you can really train those guys a little bit more than those guys who may fluctuate. You got guys going new weights per year, guys to graduate and transfer to portal. All those things come into play of how you're going to train, especially a wrestler, because it's just different.
And I had some questions on this too. So the wrestling sport coach controls a lot of the conditioning that goes on in the room. So you have to have a relationship with whoever that coach is to find out exactly what's going on, so that you know you're not putting more into buckets that he's already filling. So how do you establish that relationship?
I think you have to understand what the coaches want, what the team is as a whole. Is it a young team? Is it a older team? Is it an experienced team? So you have to put those all into play and ask the coach what is his idea behind what's the expectations for me. And my thought is, how can I help you? How can I be a tool for you? And from there, I think he's going to practice. I think the biggest thing is to be a fly on the wall. Especially as a new individual coming into a program that's really established, very young, but had really good experience in the past, in a really hard conference. So you just want to sit there and just, okay, how do they do this? How do I make this more efficient? What can I bring elements to? Rather than, I think sometimes, even you may have an idea in your head that we all had, and you want to try to put influence right then and there. We think if you don't want to do that, because now you're around too many things, now people are almost overloaded with of learning things. You want to kind of look at things, how to make this better, start tweaking things, and slowly you start putting implements that can help the team be more efficient, more stronger. Just from this learning of what they want to do, you may just go into that. So I think the relationship between me and the coach is, I look at what his idea behind training is. How does he train? Is it just running? Is it more of like a cardio circuit kind of thing? All those things implemented. Do you have bike sprints? Do you have tire flips? All the kind of stuff that wrestlers like to do. Kind of use those and say, okay, what am I doing in my training and the strength training that I can implement with this? Or what can I do that they're doing that I can kind of pull back in my training because they're doing in there? Then you go back and forth and you can come up with a plan yourself.
Where do isometrics fall in your training? A wrestler spends an enormous amount of time in an isometric state on the mat. How do you improve that?
I think it comes from different positions which you want to do. Like, for example, like the biggest movement we probably do are pull-ups, lower body wide, anything from a squat variation to a glute bridge or a barbell glute bridge. And anyway you put those isometrics at, any progression within the season, I think is beneficial to them. I think early in the off season we did a lot more of those, just because of the stretch they do go through. You can throw a little bit more at them because they don't have the hours within practice. But now you're in a place where, okay, now the hours spike up, a little bit more intensity goes up. Now you want to implement those a little bit more with bench training. So I use them throughout training in different movements throughout the whole year. Honestly, a little bit more in the off season, but they're beneficial, I think, all year round with those guys.
Now, I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't research this, so I'll just ask it. Does Northwestern have a women's program?
No women's program. I think only maybe, I don't quote me on this, I think maybe, I would say under 20 teams actually have a true women's program. I know I think at Princeton, I was there, we had some women athletes, I think, on the team who did like some tournaments outside with the other women's programs in the country, but we don't have a women's program.
I know it's slowly gathering speed, and I would imagine Northwestern will stay on the forefront of that. I know Iowa has one, and I'm sure there's some other Big Ten schools that do. Yeah,
I think that's going to be a growing, like wrestling in general, but definitely on the women's side, it's given opportunity in the sport that people that do it. They always did it out in club, and they got to the world circuit, Olympic circuit that way. But now you're on the college stage, possibly. It's a really cool thing to see, I think.
Well, with your exposure to it, you may not be able to answer it, but I'm going to throw it out here and see what your thoughts are on it. I spent all week at a big tournament here in Missouri. Girls and boys. The girls side wrestle on a couple mats. The boys side wrestle on a couple mats. Watching at the high school level, the girls wrestle totally different. They almost have a sumo-style wrestling approach. Seems to be isometric, who can drag and who can pull and who can take advantage of an athlete being off balance. Sled work, in my mind, would create the best women's wrestlers you could make as far as strength and conditioning. What are your thoughts on sled work?
Oh, sled work. So I think it depends on what your aspects of it and how you want to implement it into a movement. I know people who use sled work depending on the lower body main movements. Like it's just for certain teams and certain demographics, it can be really huge. I think for things like rugby, it could be really huge. I think things like, say, sumo stance and women's wrestling could be really big. I think for any beneficial, even for certain sports, I think, and you put in wrestling, for example, like it's having the input and the intent of having that isometric drag in certain positions. You're there and you're holding and you're waiting for a glimpse of explosion to be after that. So I think that wrestling could be sled work could be really beneficial to numerous sports.
I hate to be so far down this road, but I want to talk about some stuff that you don't normally get to talk about. So if we get too far down this road, man, just send me a different direction, okay?
Okay, I got you.
Creating efficiency in these big rooms. How are you able to maintain that and get what you want?
So I think I've been in a lot of different rooms. I've been with a lot of different coaches, great coaches who have rooms differently, different room setups. Has a big one to it. So at Stony Brook, I had women's lacrosse and women's swim and dive. So the biggest thing for us, I had enough time to kind of get things done. When I got to Princeton, I had numerous teams, not that much time, not that much space. maybe so Princeton, I think maybe top 5, most teams in the country, maybe like 34 teams there. Rowing, swimming, football, lacrosse, men and women, squash, you can diving, you name it, soccer. So you have all these sports and becoming more efficient in how you do things and getting down to the bare bones rather than sometimes you put fluff in your lift. You really ask yourself, is that needed? What can I do with this kid's time and how to be more efficient with it? So for us, it was more about, okay, depending on what the season was for lacrosse and season, our games were Saturday. I had a strength day on Monday, a power day on Wednesday, a more of a volume day for guys who didn't play low minute athletes on Friday. Break it down that way. For tennis or swimming, I may do like a more tier system S because they may have more meets coming up. So I want to get that system in, make sure they get a good amount of work total body wise, knowing that they may miss a day no matter what. So you have to be more efficient in how you do things, but how the room works, it depends on everything. How much space you got, what equipment you got. So understanding your environment is a huge piece of that. But understanding what system works for each team. I'm not a system person. I'm not a West Side. I'm not a Tri-Phasic. I'm thinking, what does this team need? If it's some type of elements of 5-3 run, okay. If they need some type of elements of here, I'm just trying to do the best for the athlete no matter what and what the space can provide me for. At Northwestern, I pretty much can do anything I want. It's really cool with that space there, but something like Princeton, where you share in a room sometimes, more often than not, you realize, okay, I need to get this athlete to do these movements, certain movements, and it could be anywhere from unilateral split squat with a barbell to a dumbbell to a kettlebell based on what space I have at that moment, So being efficient and being able to improvise is definitely a big piece of where I'm at now, but it put me in a better position. Now I can kind of pretty much do a lot more than I thought I could do before, just based on my experience.
Now, the program will range from very, very simple to very complex. You're going to have athletes, and me and you talked about this, so we had a phone call earlier in the week for people that may not understand that, but you're going to have Lamborghinis and you're going to have Toyota Corollas. How do you get the Toyota Corollas closer to a Lamborghini, and how do you get the Lamborghini to stay in its top form?
Trust and honesty. Telling the athlete, understanding the athlete what their role is and where we are right now. Incoming freshman, like you a senior, how much time we got, where can we get you to, are all real factors to. If you're a Corolla got 250 miles on it and you're cruising, Jesus, you're durable, you're reliant. Like you are, may not be all flashy, but you're going to be there and be successful. We're not going anything without you. So you may not be as bright as that number one recruit, but that's a lot of expectations. If something goes wrong, that value drops really fast. That Toyota looks really good then, doesn't it? So you have to understand that and talk to your athletes where you want to be at and be honest with them. Okay, what's your game? What do you want to be at? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to give you false thoughts about how we're going to get there, but understanding we have to put the time in to do that is valued. Being intentful, having more efficiency with our time, being limited, because the athletes I worked with the last 2 years are very career driven. They're not sport driven, which is great. They want to win. Don't get me wrong. They want to win just as bad. They want that career, but it's bigger than that. So for them, it's okay, how do I do it? What's the plan? And for me as a coach, I have to explain that to them and get it to them the best way they can digest it. So if that means being more honest and saying this is the goal, how we're going to get there, you may have to put a little bit more time by yourself individually, because I know you can study in your room. Maybe if you study in your room, do some more ankle mobilization to get that ankle work. How do we do that? How do we microdose you enough to get where we need to be? So no matter, depending where you are, that Lamborghini can be nice. That car will be really nice too, and confident to where you need to be. So you do it within a team, we do it individually. So I hope that answers your question, but I think it's just a matter of how the trust factor and the delivery, the intent of how you want to talk to each and every athlete, because they all have a piece of the puzzle, and the piece is the same. So I'm not going to treat you the same. I'm going to have a program that may be the same things, but the emphasis may be different within that.
Now you brought something up in there talking about studies and your time in the Ivy Leagues, and Northwestern's very accomplished. Does the CNS know the difference in your body from the stress of preparing for a major test or your academic standard compared to the weight room? I mean, are you seeing extra high stress kids because of the load they're carrying in the school?
I will tell you this. I've never stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning to keep up for a test. I've never done it. And I've studied my butt off. Some of these athletes, they're 6 hours in the library, and you're like, oh my God. They go to practice 3 hours, then they're training, and they have other things they're doing. They may be in the club, they may be in some type of leadership role on campus, and they come in and they can be shot from school. And it's nervous, like I said, the nervousness has no thought behind where the stress comes from, and they just wear it. And being at these two universities, highly academically driven, it's very blatant to see. It's just what you're given with as a coach, and now you have to be able to maneuver in those things, and see how to get the most out of my athlete. I tell them all the time, like, hey, I want 100% of you each day. That 100% may be 90% today, because I don't expect everybody to be 100% each day. That's not real life. It's not realistic. But you give me 80% of 80 if you got 80 today. That's all I ask of you. So, because I know you guys are stressed. I've been there, but you guys do it at a different level. You guys are so proactive in your life, which I never was, and I want to help you do that. And me frying you in the weight room on top of your studies and your family stuff isn't doing anything. It doesn't mean we're not going to work efficiently. That's me understanding the situation I'm in. So I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, there's only so many pieces of pie to go around.
Yeah.
And everybody needs their share.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, social media, that's changed the way athletes view coaching and what they think a good program consists of. Fighting the culture of what's put out there as great coaching. How are you able to navigate that?
Consistency wins all. Consistency wins all. I think that's the biggest piece I harp on my athletes. The idea behind social media and training, I think, is a really good tool for all coaches, young coaches, old coaches, to experience different things that you've never seen before. But at the same time, understanding your situation, as well as where that person is in their training. You see Christian McCaffrey do something. It looks very nice. He's very technical. He is one of the best athletes on the planet. He's the best athlete. He's maybe doing some complex thing that normal people don't do, but that's because normal people aren't built like that. So I think the benefit to seeing that, you get to see these high-level athletes do really incredible things, but it comes the realization of how I'm going to present this to my athlete and how I'm going to get the adaptation that I need for the sport, what the sport demands. Because some of the things you may see may not be what the sport demands. You see some athletes, it's so funny, you see athletes come in the weight room sometimes, you see I have wrestlers cleaning 150, 120 kilos, something like that. And a swimmer would come in and be like, oh my God, he's so strong. I'm like, yeah, he's super strong. But he couldn't swim a mile like you guys. Like, if you guys do 1,000 pull-ups, he could do maybe 20 or 30 pull-ups. You guys do 40 pull-ups. It's just a different thing you guys need to prepare for your sport. So comparing things or seeing things, you have to understand what that goes into, what's needed for the demands of the sport, no matter what it is. So I see videos, I love them. But I'm like, I always think to myself, as a coach, you see so many things. You're like, how old is that person? How long has he been training? What movement is that? I would never look at a program and go, oh my God, this is crazy, unless I see some really extreme stuff. Most times I think to take a step back, because people do the same thing to me. If I post something, it's like, oh, this is great, or this is not efficient. But you're like, you don't know how I got there. What's my intention as a coach? That's the biggest piece all the time. Your intention may be good, maybe doing it the wrong way, but understanding what that intention has a lot to do with it.
Now you brought up Christian McCaffrey. He's got Kula and all those guys put out a lot of information, and they show a lot of what they're doing. So me and you had this conversation a little bit earlier in the week, so I wanted to see kind of where you were at on it. You watch him run sprints, and he'll bring his arms up into a pistol, or he'll take his arms over his head, or with the PVC pipe. He's more accommodated to that than your average athlete. But if you take an athlete that's not accommodated to that, when they bring their hands up or they go overhead and it shifts their hips forward, is that an overspeed eccentric until they become adapted to that?
Is that? Like, I can't give a hard answer on that. Is that I think the idea behind what you're saying is for the first phase, and depending where that phase ends and how fast the athlete adapts to that that change, and the idea, I think that is exactly what you're talking about. Have not hip shift and allow the athlete to almost self-correct eventually because of the off center and feel like, okay, I have to get in a good position where my hips need to be in great position to strike the ground. So I think so. In some ways, if that makes sense.
I think once they accommodate and that's the way they run, it quits being overspeed.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, their hip shifts forward, so now their foot striking the ground faster. You created an environment that
learning curve is
yes,
your benefit at that point.
Yes.
So it's almost, I think that's, I guess with anything you could say that. Learning curve is just the point of it's like you start putting with the athlete, then it gets fast really fast. Then you get to the point where it plateaus, now you got to do or another notch correcting. So yeah, I like it.
So, like you just said, you're going to hit plateaus. You're going to see peaks and you're going to see valleys. You have an ever-changing athlete. Evaluating the progress of each athlete so that they understand, hey, you're just in a phase right here that we got to come through, or this is a new adaptation, so you're just doing amazing. How do you help the athlete understand where they're at and to keep moving forward?
Okay. I think a lot has it based on where the season is and what the idea behind things are. So we had a commonality with wrestling. So with wrestling, they got here, we did a 3-week eccentric block, a 3-week iso block, and from there we've been doing concentrics and some type of pause and some variation to that ability with our main movements. But they understand these first almost the first 6 weeks is a growth and very much so adaptation phase where fundamental movements is huge for us. Long eccentrics, 6-second eccentrics, and not allowing them to put a lot of weight on the bar on purpose. I want to see how they functionally move. I want to see what do we need to work on, but I also want to get them strong. I think the biggest piece for them is we're going to go to a phase where they start to cut weight. So understanding how I get them really strong and where they want to be weight-wise for those 6 weeks and kind of dictate off that what they need or we lacked, what I saw, what based on athletes and weight classes. For example, our heavyweight may is to a little more volume or like an extra set or two because he's a freshman and he needs to be able to handle the Big Ten with the big boys. So he may be on something a little bit different. But I think understanding what you are in the year as a big thought idea to the athlete. Okay, this is where we are. This is going to be really sore. This is where we're going to grow. You may see yourself not pick a lot of weight right now. The reward might be right here. But give me 8 weeks where things start to be a little bit more fast and more explosive. You're not held back. You're not drained. Nervous system wise because of the pause and isos and eccentrics, and I could benefit that. Talk about a little bit field hockey. We're in season. We're peaking almost in the late October, November. So a little bit more maybe French contrast, a little bit more plyometrics, a little bit more singles in that sense. So depending where you want to be, where you're at, and having describing what that benefit will be for athletes. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are my expectations for you seeing the benefit? It may not always be in weight. It may be, hey, I got another 3 inches on a box jump. Those benefits too. So I think those are the progress throughout individually. It may come in weight for others. It may come in playing time for others. You don't know where that outlet could be either. So I think that's the biggest piece of figuring out what the progress within the athlete within a year or within that year.
Now you talked about incoming freshmen. So contrary to popular belief, every D1 athlete that shows up to the weight room does not always have a huge training age. Those guys are able to handle way more volume than your top guys that have a high training age because of muscle recruitment. Do you guys take advantage of that and really hit those young guys hard because they can handle more volume?
So think about what was so cool about us. We had them come a little. They were here, I think 5-6 weeks, incoming freshmen. So you get the exposure to that early in the season, early in the summer, for a couple of weeks. But then they go back home for another month. Then they're pretty much under your program with everybody else at that point. I think the scariest part for any coach, strength coach wise, it's about specifically fall or any income, especially fall, is that freshman class athlete where everything's being thrown at them academically, relationship wise, athletically. Stress is stress. So for us, that big 6 to 8 week block is a very scary thing for everybody. Because you just want to make sure that they're doing the right thing. You want to throw too much at them. But for us, I think I can't harp enough on eccentrics. I can't. For me, it slows everything down fundamentally and form-wise. You see everything. You see the mistakes, what they need immediately. And at that point, you don't need a true different program for that incoming freshman at that point. Because I think everybody, especially when you talk about the off season, they need that exposure anyway. And you can't, I'll say you can't, but I assume my athletes don't do the programs because you have to assume the worst, not the best. But I can't come in and expect, hey, everybody started to the last 2 weeks of the program, they should be at a certain level. At that point, we'll maybe be doing doubles. And I'm like, that's not the expectation. We can slow this thing down. I believe in slow cooking the thing rather than trying to throw too much at them.
Talking eccentrics, do you prefer the slow eccentrics over overspeed eccentrics, or do you balance them in?
Balance them in throughout the season, depending on where they are with expectation of practice too. I don't throw too much at them, so I can even do I went through a 6-second first rep eccentric on a 3-set. The first rep on my count, so I see everybody in the room, look down the line, down to 6. Then after that, they got 2 more reps on their own. Maybe a different team, you may just say, hey, you have 3 by 6. Rear foot elevated eccentric, 3-second eccentric on every rep. So depending on what the trust relationship between the athlete too, and for us, the wrestling group was really young, so I wanted to see everybody. I wanted to see the form, and at that point, they're usually picking a weight that they can do their first rep on, because everybody's at the same time. You don't want to be the guy missing out on reps on that first set because you guys nailed because you picked the wrong weight. So I think the mix between the two are a good blend.
What benefits do you see in slow eccentrics? And I'm asking this, if strength's measured in time, the growth in slow eccentrics, how does that relate back, and where do you see the benefits?
Form, technical form. You come to an athlete, most of us, the expectation is they all train. You can't have that expectation. You got to slow things down because risk worth reward. You can't take back that extra volume that you threw at them. So for me, the benefit is slowing things down. And if they can do it slow, they pretty much do it fast to a degree. It may not be to the peak velocity at that point because they've been trained so much to go slow. I think that recruitment of learning that and unlearning the slowness, I think, of the eccentric can benefit rather than me teaching them fast before and telling them to slow down. But so slowing them down, I think it would come with fiber recruitment and strength development is huge for the eccentric piece. Also for an incoming or a kid coming back from a long-term break, but also you fundamentally see what's wrong with their fundamentally movement and what their movement patterns like. I'd rather look at the movement pattern than any weight in the world because you have really bad movement patterns here. It may dictate some things, the ability you can do on the field or on the mat because of your ability to move in certain directions.
As we move to a faster athlete and we start thinking about more mass specific, how do slow eccentrics play into that? Because I think you would be going the opposite direction. You're actually putting on size with slow eccentric and creating hypertrophy. How do you find that balance?
So I think going back to where we are in season, and for us, like some of our smaller guys wrestling wise, you don't do too much of those to a degree, because just you want too much lean body mass they're cutting too. So I think the benefit of those slow eccentrics can only do so much for you, and where the timing is with that. So we use them. I think the benefit for me is honestly that first couple weeks to see where they are, maybe shred off of that for a second, until probably the following off season for really slow ones, and from there we may have some type of tempo eccentric just to see where we are in the season. We may have a week, we have 2 weeks, depending on championship season, and I think throw a little bit extra at them to see where they are. But I think it's depending on timing is the biggest benefit, or how do you plan those slow eccentrics.
Right, because they create immense soreness. So you'd hate to you wouldn't want to throw it at your wrestlers right before the Big Ten tournament. I would imagine.
Exactly. So you use them selectively. I think with any training, but you want to get the benefit, the adaptation you want out of them. So for us, it's more about, okay, I want someone to get that lean body mass, but I also want to see how they fundamentally move. That takes us 3 weeks, great. It takes us 2 weeks, great. But also think about what kind of team you have. A really young team, okay, most of them need lean body mass. And also, I don't trust them enough right now to see what they're doing or expectation their movement wise. So how do I do that? I slow them down. Slow down my echo. And after that 3 weeks, okay, I trust you. Boom. Now we're moving things a little bit faster. We're dropping out of that. And now within that, I got my lean mass, but I also got the idea, okay, this is how my athletes look. It just happened to come through eccentrics, if that makes sense.
So why do you do what you do now? You could have had a great career, I'm sure, coaching lacrosse somewhere, not doing all this stuff. You probably could have made great money and stayed in that arena. But you decided to take on strength and conditioning and move into a somewhat different arena. And now you're the director of Olympic sports at Northwestern. What pushed you this direction?
I think I wanted to not impact 20 athletes, but impact 400 athletes. So as a director role, you get to have opportunity to not only coach great athletes, you get to help a lot of other coaches out and grow a team and learn from each other and have an ecosystem where not only are you making yourself better as a performance coach or as a director, but more so as an ecosystem, you're learning about someone's experience. What did you want to do? How do I get you there? I'm in an opportunity. I'm in the position to not only be helped or help other coaches. That may be through a conversation. That may be through a podcast like this. It may be through different avenues. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to work with a really high level teams. I've been to mid majors, state schools, the Ivy League, and now I'm in the Big Ten. So I think opportunity, honestly, and working for great people and being at really high level schools, I want to win. I've been an opportunity to win at places and be around people who win at really high levels. But I also have the opportunity to learn a lot. I'm usually the dumbest person in the room. I keep going back to that because the institution I'm at are really highly academically driven. So I get to learn all the time from these athletes, which keeps me sharp. So that's why I did it, to chase down greatness with some of these high level teams and to help a department grow.
Now, I have watched some podcasts, so I know a little bit about your background and some of the adversity you've overcome. Moving into Northwestern just had a pretty big shakeup in the athletic department not very long ago. Helping these programs overcome that adversity and move forward without looking back. How are you able to rebuild some of the trust in those areas?
Yeah, we have great people here. Northwestern has great people here across the board. And our athletes are awesome, and they believe in what we do here. And I think for any challenges, I think we got tighter. And I was new to Northwestern when things went the way they went. But I think when I got here, I didn't lose trust in the people here. That's why I chose to be here. And things do happen. Unfortunately, it did happen. But the athletes here and the department here is stepping forward and moving forward. And you want to keep your athletes the number one focus. How do we help you how do we get you where we need to be? How do you feel more comfortable? You ask those questions, and it comes from the top down. So I'm super excited for the future of Northwestern and how things are going now. From the whole department, from all our teams that are playing right now. It's just a really cool experience to be here at a place like here. I'm just super grateful. It's awesome. I really do like it. I like Chicago. It's a really cool place, but the athletes here, man, and I can't get enough of it. So I'm super honored.
So like you kind of said in there, you got to keep moving forward. You can't go back. You can't dwell on the past. You can make changes to help everybody. So teaching that relentless attitude to your athletes that, hey, no matter what happened, we're going to move in the right direction. No matter how hard it looks right now, we're going to keep going. How do you instill that?
You have to find what makes them go. What's their why? I think for different reasons, athletes, they do things for different reasons. Not every athlete does it for school, not does it for their family. You have these kind of mantras to maybe check off that athlete may want to do. That may not be for that athlete. You may have a conversation with the athlete. Hey, coach, left too early. It's like, hey, you want to be a mechanical engineer? You got to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, buddy. Like the doors don't open at 5 o'clock, like or 7 o'clock in the morning all the time. Maybe they open before. So kind of bringing them down and realizing what the idea is behind things and teaching them why we do things. It's not. I think people get so obsessed with the idea behind these cool big swings, how people do things and how they're really successful. People who are really successful do things really consistently, normal things consistently every day. It is so hard to be consistent. It's not the thing, not the hoo-ha big thing. It's the consistent people who become successful and doing things over and over again, so they become so so reliable and so normal, so natural that people may seem like you're crazy. So I think that's why I have to my athletes to become consistent. Hey, give me 10 minutes. If you want to be more flexible, you want to be more mobile, give me 10 minutes. 10 minutes each day. Yeah, 10 minutes each day for 365 days. I promise you'll be a better mover in whatever movement you want to be. So you have to understand, you'll be really consistent in what you want to do. So that's why I kind of say, I don't harp on these big movements, harp with consistency. It's hard to be consistent. Mental toughness, people always think about these hoorah kind of like mantras, and as we go through grit, it's hard, like waking up every day and doing the damn thing every single day over and over and over and over again. That's what's freaking hard. That's mentally tough for me. There's no potion to it. That's the mentally tough stuff. Like, if you know it, if you're an adult, you get it, like waking up every day and going to work. That's hard. That's hard. It's hard sometimes. And I love my job, believe me. But sometimes you have to understand you have to do what you need to do to perform at a high level. That may be training. That may be going to school and doing your work, but that's stuff you have to do to become successful, and not only in your sport but in life. So,
being successful is a boring project. It's going to be boring. Yes. Clear up until you get a chance at what you'd prepared for, and then once you get in that spot, well, yes, it's a great opportunity. That will become boring too because you took all the same habits with you. It's not this flashy. Yeah. Yes.
So people always think it's like this flashy big thing. It's like, no, like it's the consistent person who does it each and every time. Then eventually you get this light on you and people are like, oh crap, you got there. That's so amazing. And it's like, I was just super consistent. Super consistent. Like, you realize that people who are usually the best athletes or the best business people or the best aren't the people who, or they have this new idea out of nowhere. It's the people who like read the blueprint of someone who was really great and was super consistent with it, and they made it theirs in their way, and their story is their story, but just being consistent. And so I try to keep my athletes. I'm like, hey, I don't mind you taking days off. That's life. Like, family is important. Things gonna happen. My expectation is not for you to be training every single day. I expect you to clock in and be consistent when you do come in, and use our time efficiently because we don't have much of it. I tell all my classes, like, hey, younger athletes, your seniors are the clock, and I don't want to let them down. So understand that, and you're going to realize that eventually. But that's the big thing there, because they're on the clock. They realize, oh crap, they close their eyes, they woke up, they're a senior, 4 years passed, and they may not be a starter. They may not have a championship, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to work a job, which they looked at, but now it's in a whole new chapter. So being consistent each and every day is my number one rule and intent probably within my weight room. You kind of teach that relentlessness. It's not flashy, it's hard to do.
And kind of what you're talking about there being on the clock. I mean, it works the same at the high school level. Heck, it works the same in life. That clock is really, really, really slow. Clear up until you realize, oh man, I am almost out of time. And usually that's your senior year, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the consistency to help develop that so that they don't get overwhelmed when they're a senior and realize it's over and that they missed out.
I tell my athletes, train like you're an incoming freshman in college or high school. Most likely going to college, because that first year you have no expectation. You are probably trying to scratch and claw for any program from coach, anything to be on the same page. When I get there, I can prove myself. Now imagine doing that every day. That same type of energy. Then you come across Jordan and Kobe, the people who just come extremely obsessed with just doing those things consistently. But yeah, that's how my athletes just understand that the clock is going, but being more efficient with your time and not having these crazy expectations of what greatness looks like. It's not this pop-up thing. It sneaks up on you, and it becomes boring to people. Then you're at the mountaintop, and now you're praised. But you had a 15-year window or 10-year window of this a great system, a great culture, and it goes by, and people don't see it. And eventually, you get to a position where you got a new job, and people get a bigger institution, and people are like, "Oh my God, he's great!" And it's like, I've been doing this my whole life, and it's not just me. Like, I've been by great people and great universities that got me to this point, and that now you're seeing it. Now it becomes this almost phase or fad because it's so hot for anything. But being great is really consistent.
And for the senior that's not consistent, college athletics is a cutthroat business.
Yeah.
If you have a sophomore that can do the job of a senior, the upside in the sophomore is way better because you have him for 3 years. The senior, he's almost out the door. So if he loses that consistency or loses that focus, they have a lot to lose, more so than the sophomore.
Yeah, the biggest thing with teams is realizing where we're going to be the next year and how we're going to get it done. What's the expectation? Because really good teams don't let anything drag them down. They will, any type of negativity will be festered out very fast, because the idea of anything getting in front of success and ideas won't do that. You see, being around even the lacrosse team here at Northwestern and the field hockey team, really to a high level and national championship competitive teams, and how they work and how they are so efficient within their culture. But every team has their ups and downs, which they do, but the understanding of the mission is the mission no matter what. And it's really cool to just watch. I mean, I'm just sitting back like, wow, this is cool, and you're part of it. But you get to see that, and you get to see some other teams who strive to be that, in the sense that they're just young, and all they need is a couple breakout plays to have that idea that it's possible. Because when you realize it's possible, you get a glimpse of a taste of it, and it's really hard to get away from. That's in life. That's from anything from you're getting a job promotion. You're like, I like the feeling of this adrenaline. I like the feeling of being wanted, being seen, and being awarded for things I want to do. So I think that in teams and for how the ecosystem works in life, and kind of echo that to your team is huge. I'm just really honest with my teams. I'm just really about life and how to make this thing work. Because I'm not going to sit out there, hey, I got 20 hours with you. I don't got 20 hours with you. And sometimes you don't want to be here. I get that. But I need you to lock in for this time and go about your day. And sometimes you have to have that mantra. Like, hey, they're up and going. But it's just it's a wild world when it comes to college athletics sometimes.
Yeah, and like any locker room, it takes very little to sway where the program is going. So if you make a recruiting step that's in the wrong direction, and like you said, you got to get in there and get out any of those athletes that are not bringing the atmosphere you want, that are festering, you have to fix that. How do you go about correcting that? How do you go about correcting this great team you had, and all of a sudden a recruiting decision went wrong, and now you almost have somebody working against you, poking a hole in your boat?
Conversation. Understanding what that athlete wants and what that athlete needs, and support you give that person. At the end of the day, like, no matter how bad the decision was, you made the decision for a reason, and something you saw in this athlete is what brought this athlete here. And it may not be me that brings through this athlete. It may be a coach. It may be me. It may be anybody. But understanding why they're doing what they're doing and how can I be assistance or what the plan is the biggest piece. Having an honest conversation. I think when you don't have that honest conversation, you don't want to have that conversation, things get assumed by either the coaching staff or the athlete, and that's when things get gray. You have to be so open, direct with your athletes. But it has to be built over time. You can't just come out and say something, but you have to have those tough conversations rather earlier than later.
Yeah, the longer they go, the more damage control you have to do.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, like, if it's a bad move, it's some type of miscommunication. I feel like it rarely happens where an athlete comes in to a place and it's like, oh, this place sucks now. It's usually like expectation. I was going to play, or so and so at different university I played with, I'm better than they're playing and I'm not playing, or they have some type of, and with the communication's not there. Like, I feel like if the communication is there, that doesn't happen. Really high efficient programs don't have miscommunication, like really clear and direct, and no blurred lines. And you may not want what you want to hear, but you're going to get what you need to hear.
Now, I've heard you talk about this when you were at Princeton. I was reading an article, and you mentioned the weight room cannot be lied to. There are no magic tricks. Creating the atmosphere where hard work is the only path to success.
The only path. It's just a matter of, you can't lie. You can't lie. You can't say, I worked my butt off all summer, coach. I'm at 500 pounds. All right, show me. Show me. You got to talk about consistency. Like, your gym doesn't happen in a week, 2 weeks. It didn't happen in a month. I think in 3 months. All of a sudden, like in 6 weeks, 6 months, I'm like, oh my God, I look good. Well, I'm faster. I'm jumping a little higher. It doesn't happen overnight. So we have to understand, like, that 401k kind of stuff. Like, you put your money in, that compound interest. All of a sudden, you got this beautiful flower now. You got a big base that you can go back to rely to because you put the work into it. So I think that's the big idea behind that atmosphere in the weight room, understanding this is an honest place. I want you to work your butt off. I want you to be honest with yourself. Can I pick it up or can I not? I want you to challenge yourself and be able to fail in there. If you can't fail in the control setting, Lord knows when the light turns on, that whistle blows and it's uncontrolled. Someone's chirping in your ear at this point now. Like, those are different factors that only you can understand on the field. So let's do some more controlled things, put ourselves in predicaments where we couldn't fail, and okay, this is our limits. Where did I fail? Did I fail with my technique? Did I fail mentally? Did I go into this rack saying, oh, I never lifted this weight before, this is going to be really hard, and all of a sudden, compared to like, hey, let me close my eyes, go to the rack and pick this thing up. Those are two different expectations, two different things, how you go into an idea. I always tell the athletes to go into things confidently. Like, you prepare for this. You put the work in for this. You let them know that, understand that. Yes, they're a really good team, but so are freaking weak. And understand that. It's not any disrespect to anything. Understand the work you put in. That's why we do what we do. But there's no place for hiding in there.
Now we'll move back into the sprint-based idea. It seems like maybe in this country we are more aerobic-based, even for anaerobic sports. We love we love conditioning for whatever reason. Once the VO2 max reached, what's the maintenance on it? Do we need to be doing everything we're doing once we achieved top end of the endurance cycle? Does that need to be maintained every day?
No. I think the biggest piece is you really practice. You're really conditioning more so. I think so, for practice because you play only 12 games, 15. No matter what, because I don't think it's really extreme on baseball, softball. Like you play 65 games, but you practice 200 days. Like you're really conditioning for practice at that point. You know, like most of your work is not on those game days. So, like, why do more than you need for that? I mean, in my opinion, like you almost tapped it out, and you have to realize what the demand of the sport is and what you're already doing. Like you got this thing that's already filled up with water, and just keep filling water into it, and it's all spilling over. You know, rather than just let that sit and fill up another bucket of things that we don't have right now, which is maybe our anaerobic, our high speed velocity, our acceleration, decel work, and stuff like that. But I think that's what it goes down to.
You know, it's a holiday for you, and you're enjoying time with your in-laws and your wife. So we'll kind of get close to wrapping this up. But
you're good. You're good.
The bucket of crabs analogy, because how you grew up and some of the things you've overcome. You know, you put one crab in a bucket, he'll try to crawl out. You put 4 crabs in the bucket, one tries to crawl out, the other one's pulling back in. And then if he continuously does that, they'll eventually break his legs so that he quits trying to crawl out. How do you overcome that? How do you eventually get to be the crab that crawls out of that bucket?
I think you have to be extremely confident who you are and demand a stance of yourself that only you can see. I think when you have ideas that you want to do and people or crabs don't really understand why you're doing the things you're doing, for example, call out the bucket. I mean, because I see something over that hill, or I have expectations, or I have dreams of just going beyond what these walls present me. You just surround yourself with people who have minds bigger than you, brains bigger than you, things that say, "Hey, that's not big enough." If you have a goal and it doesn't scare you, for me, it's not big enough. If I tell myself, "Hey, I want to be a strength coach," oh, I did it. If I tell myself, "Hey, like I want to be a director of performance at a really high level school in the next 10 years," I want to be able to start a community service program for inner city kids. Like you have these scary things, you have your expectations, because that means you have to do a lot of work to get there. You have to put in a lot of precedence to get there, a lot of stones to get there. So I think having those expectations, having people around you who keep you there, are the biggest pieces to getting out of that bucket eventually, and be able to help other people as well in those positions. Because at the end of the day, my wife hates that I say this, but I'm 29 now, so maybe I got 60 more years. Maybe. So I'll be damned if I don't do what I want to do, and live out the goals that I have and the ideas that I have for my family, for my athletes, for my coaches, and come out completely authentic. Because if I'm not that, what else can I be? So that is the idea behind getting out of that bucket. I think just putting your mind to something and supporting people who support you. At the same time, like gotta be selfish sometimes. I do believe that you gotta be selfish sometimes to be great. You could always help. I mean selfish. I don't mean, hey, I'm not helping anybody. I mean selfish in the fact that, hey, I need to. I'm not going out. I'm not hanging out. Sometimes if this is the plan, for anything, you got to sacrifice. So I think sacrificing is huge to where you want to be.
Well, that kind of leads into this next question really well. You could have stayed at Princeton and help rack up national championships in lacrosse. I mean, there was a clear path there, obviously. So how scary was it when Northwestern and you come to an agreement for you to go there? So you move halfway across the country, you know nobody. You're now in the Big Ten. You know, how scary was that, and how were you finally able to reconcile that fear and make that decision?
It was definitely scary, in a sense that You just got comfortable. You're establishing this new idea for lacrosse. You play lacrosse, and you're having this almost wave in a sense where the culture of lacrosse starting to believe, oh, you can really sprint and not condition. But at the same time, I wanted the opportunity to run my own department to a certain degree because I've learned so much from Princeton and other people before. And I want to be able to help coaches that help me and coaches that like the coaches that help me. I want to be like my mentors, my coaches who gave me ideas, put me in a situation to be successful, put me in a position to fail. So it was a very scary situation because, like you said, like we're doing very, very well. I look at it now, like the recruiting, the number one recruiting class in the country this year, lacrosse wise. You're like, oh man, that's what we could have done, you know. But I talk to the strength coach now, and I was like, I'm so pumped for you, dude. You got a great group of individuals, great coaching staff, and I want people to experience that too. So it was definitely a scary situation, but at the same time, I get the opportunity to work with really high level kids here. I get to work with another national championship contender here with field hockey, and a sport I really didn't train. Honestly, I knew about the sport of field hockey. I grew up in high school. Our team was really pretty good. Won state championship and so on, and I understood it, but not to the extent I know now. And now you see how it's just as important to them as any other team. And you see the grind of what they're going through. You're like, whoa, like I work my butt off. Lacrosse works their butt off. I'm like, they're playing twice a week. Like you're realizing, oh my God, like, and it's the shortest season, and it's compact and it's tough in this division as well with Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa. Like it's a really cutthroat division when it comes to field hockey, and you're like, oh crap, and that's what you feed off as a coach, of that competition stuff. So it's been a really cool transition for me. Even my tennis team, like there are a couple graduates, and I have younger kids competing, and that's a really cool thing. You can't buy that anywhere. Experience you can't buy. So when you're a first year or a freshman, you get to play. It's a rare opportunity. People think it's so normal because you hear a lot. Ask the other freshmen who aren't playing. You know, like ask the other first year that they aren't playing. It's a really rare situation because it's a really tough learning curve to not only compete at a high level, understand a high level, and deal with the pressure of being a first year and being in that situation. Because at the end of the day, you may be a starter or a star or a key component to that team, but you go back sometimes to your friends who don't have that same feeling because they don't have that opportunity. You know, so like those are things you think about when you come to like making a transition and having a so similar athlete from Princeton and Northwestern with academic mind, analysis mind. It made it a really smooth transition, but it also made it okay. This is why I'm here. It was almost another level up in a sense. I called Northwestern like the Ivy League of the Midwest, like just that kind of idea behind it too. So yeah.
It's easy to make those decisions when things aren't going good. When you feel like your back's against the wall, it's like, well, what can we lose? But you had a lot to lose, so you really put a lot out there.
Yeah, I literally was like, okay, my working lacrosse that I usually do, which is like my safe haven. I'm going to a program who's been winning, but I don't want to mess anything up. Now I'm coming to wrestling. I'm like, this is the gauntlet of wrestling. Like this is okay. Now I got my hands full. I got tennis, which is pretty much a gauntlet too, with national champions being in Ohio State and other Big Ten schools. And it's like, okay, I got 3 solid teams, great teams that I have to work with, and then one per season. So I'm going each season in game mode, which is pretty exciting to be around as well. Just to feed off that, understand that, and I get to be an athlete again. I think it's no better feeling for me. Like I get to see these athletes grow and blossom into these great human beings, but to see, okay, coach, we see that light go off in their head. Like, oh, you get it now. You understand why I yelled at you. You understand why I pushed you. Because I want that moment to be a lifetime. I want you to be 29, 38, 30 years old and be like, man, like I put everything I had into it and I was feeling successful. And that success may not be the national championship, but it may seem to be like, hey, I know that if I put my mind to something like consistently, I'm going to win.
So I'll wrap up with this question because you just kind of hit on it and made me think of it. So you're 29. The seniors that you're dealing with, a lot of them are 24, 25 years old. That's a very small age gap, and especially to be in a position you are. How do you manage that? Because a lot of those guys you could have actually went to school with. They could have been a freshman when you were a senior, So setting that line and working within those bounds, how tough is that?
I learned very early. Because when I was a lacrosse player at Hofstra, that following summer I was an intern. I went from going out with the guys to my coach saying, if you have to build a relationship of, you're coaching them. And you create that boundary where they can relate to you, but you understand the mission is the mission, and it's to get you better in performance. So when you're around my age, they always think I'm a little older, which is great, I guess. But understanding what they come from and having that similarity, okay, I understand that piece, but being old enough to be like, hey, I know exactly what you're going through, but this is how we need to do it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be extremely consistent, and that's how we're going to win. It isn't flashy. We may do some flashy elements to what we need to do, but at the end of the day, the line is the line. I have to keep that line because you don't want things to get blurred. You don't want things to seem like lackadaisical. I think when you're in the weight room, it's a place where I want you to enjoy it, but I want you to I put my construction hat on and get to work. I need to start building adaptation. I need to start building lean body mass, whatever that man needs for my sport. Because at the end of the day, for field hockey, maybe 4 years, you got maybe, say, on the higher end, I'm making this up, maybe 100 games. Maybe 100 games in 4 years. So realize that. And that's going to the national championship. That's me going to national championship every year. Or for wrestling, like you got so limited time. If you're worried about these matches or the game days, you're crazy. Because God forbid injury happens, now that game is eliminated, be at practice. So you better understand that where you're going to get better at, but where you're going to love the game at, and are these practices. Because at the end of the day, that is what prepared you for that game. But that game almost is so minuscule in the sense of like development in an athlete. I think people get so, yes, the wins and the losses to get people paid. Believe me, I know that. But the people who practice really hard usually get paid too, because those people have really good results on Saturday, Sundays, or wherever you play. So I think that balance needs to be there. I also think that understanding of what the athlete needs to be there. Also understand that what that coach needs to know, or how he wants to, or he or she wants to get things done, to come full circle. I think as a performance coach, you got to play any role you need to do. Tell that kid on, hey, we need to get stronger, bigger, faster, man. I need you on the field, regardless of what that is, or the mat. I need you healthy. That's my number one concern. You're moving well. I want to see you be healthy for 4 years. I ask all my seniors. I told all my freshmen, look up to your seniors to ask them who's been healthy 4 years. And not a lot of hands go up. This is the nature of the beast in any sport. You play at really high levels. Like, you're going to get hurt to some degree. Like, we try to minuscule those kind of moments. It's a scary thing to say, but it's a reality in any sport. Like, if you had a person that go 4 years without injury, he's like, that's awesome. That is. That's a rare necessity. But it's the way it is.
Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. I think Northwestern is lucky to have you. You bring a lot of energy and a new way of thinking to a lot of things, and I'm sure that's going to be tough in some ways, but I think it's going to be very helpful in a lot of others. So enjoy the rest of your Christmas break. Hopefully many more national championships.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's been a great podcast, and hopefully just a little bit next time too as well.
All right. Thank you, Coach.